My husband and sister had been having an affair for years while I was planning her wedding, so I waited until her wedding day to expose everything in front of our friends and family, and seeing their reaction was worth the wait. Hey everyone, I've been holding this in for months, but I think it's finally time to share what happened. I still can't believe I'm writing this, but here goes. I'm Sarah, 32F, and 6 months ago I discovered my husband Mike, 34M, was having an affair with my younger sister Emma, 29F. But that's not even the craziest part. I waited until their wedding day to expose everything. I know what you're thinking, how did I not see this coming? Trust me, I've asked myself that question 1,000 times. Mike and I had been married for 8 years, and things weren't perfect, but I thought we were happy. We had our routines, our inside jokes, our Sunday morning coffee ritual. Emma would come over for dinner every week, and I actually thought it was sweet how well they got along. Turns out they were getting along a lot better than I knew. It all started when I noticed Mike acting weird with his phone. He'd take calls in another room, always kept it face down, suddenly had a password on everything. I remember this one night specifically. We were having dinner, and his phone kept lighting up with notifications. Every time it buzzed, he'd glance at it nervously, then at me, like he was checking if I'd noticed. I did notice, of course. I noticed everything. The changes were subtle at first. He started working late more often, claiming big projects needed his attention. He joined a gym, which was weird because Mike had always hated exercise, and suddenly became obsessed with his appearance. New clothes, new cologne, even started using skincare products. At the time, I actually thought he might be going through some kind of midlife crisis. If only it had been that simple. What really set off alarm bells was when he started being overly nice. Mike was never a cruel person, but he'd always been somewhat distant, caught up in his own world. But suddenly he was bringing me flowers, suggesting date nights, even offering to cook dinner, things he hadn't done since we were dating. Looking back, it's obvious now that it was guilt making him act that way. I tried not to be paranoid, but something felt off. Then one night, he fell asleep on the couch and his phone kept buzzing. I know I shouldn't have looked, but something in my gut told me I had to. The messages I saw made me physically sick. Hundreds of texts between him and Emma, going back months. The earliest ones were innocent enough, talking about family dinners, sharing jokes. But then they started getting flirty. Inside jokes I wasn't part of. Heart emojis. Late-night conversations about how they couldn't sleep. Then I found the pictures. Not just the explicit ones, though those were bad enough. It was the casual, intimate ones that hurt more somehow. Emma in Mike's car, wearing his favorite sweatshirt. Mike cooking in our kitchen while Emma sat on the counter in poses that looked disturbingly domestic. Selfies of them together in places I recognized, the park where Mike and I had our first date, the beach where we got engaged. They were systematically replacing my memories with their own. The worst messages weren't even the romantic ones. It was them talking about me. Laughing about how oblivious I was. Making plans around my schedule. Sarah's working late on Thursday, want to come over? She thinks I'm at a business dinner, but I'm actually taking Emma to that new Italian place. They had turned deceiving me into a game, and they were clearly enjoying it. Pet names, hearts, explicit photos, they weren't even trying to be subtle anymore. I found messages where they planned their meetups in detail, coordinating their stories to make sure they didn't get caught. Tell Sarah you're at the gym, Emma would write. I'll say I'm meeting Claire for coffee. They had code words for everything. Business meeting meant hotel rendezvous. Wedding planning meant date night. Family emergency meant weekend getaway. What made me sick to my stomach was realizing how many girls' nights and work emergencies had actually been them together. That spa weekend Emma said she spent with her college friends? She was with Mike at a beach resort. The business trip Mike took to Chicago? Emma had coincidentally been there for a job interview the same weekend. They'd been playing me for months, maybe even years. The worst part? They were planning a future together. Talking about how they'd break it to me gently once the time was right. I wanted to scream, throw things, wake him up and confront him right there. But something stopped me. Maybe it was shock, maybe it was rage, but I decided to play it cool. I took screenshots of everything, sent them to myself, then put his phone back exactly where it was. The next morning, I acted completely normal. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. For the next few weeks, I watched them like a hawk. Every dinner, every family gathering, every casual interaction, I saw it all with new eyes. The subtle touches, the knowing looks, the inside jokes I'd always brushed off as innocent. They were playing me for a fool, and they thought they were getting away with it. Then came the bombshell. Emma announced she was engaged to her boyfriend James. Everyone was thrilled, especially Mike, who volunteered to help with all the wedding planning. I wanted to throw up every time they discussed it, knowing what I knew. But I kept quiet, biding my time. The wedding preparations were absolute torture. Each day brought new opportunities for them to flaunt their affair right under everyone's noses. Mike volunteered to help with everything: venue hunting, menu tasting, even flower arrangements. He'd never shown that much interest in our own wedding, but suddenly he was an expert on wedding planning. I remember one particularly painful day at the bridal boutique. Emma was trying on wedding dresses, and she kept asking Mike's opinion, pretending it was because he had such good taste. She'd come out in each dress, twirling and posing, while he gave detailed feedback. Our mother thought it was so sweet that my husband was taking such an interest in his sister-in-law's wedding. I had to excuse myself to throw up in the boutique's bathroom. Then Emma asked me to be her maid of honor. Can you believe the audacity? I mean, who does that to their own sister? I had to sit through countless dress fittings, menu tastings, and venue tours, watching her play the blushing bride while knowing she was sleeping with my husband. Every time she asked my opinion on flowers or centerpieces, I wanted to scream, "How about some integrity instead?" And I accepted with a smile. I even threw her the perfect bridal shower, complete with champagne toasts and heartfelt speeches about sisterly love. The entire time, I was dying inside, watching her open expensive gifts from our family and friends, knowing she was building her new life on a foundation of lies. During the shower, our mother gave a touching speech about how proud she was of both her daughters, me for being such a supportive sister, and Emma for finding her perfect match. If only she knew that Emma's perfect match was actually my husband. I excused myself to the bathroom and had a panic attack, but no one noticed because they were all too busy playing wedding shower games. Emma actually cried when I said yes, hugging me and saying how lucky she was to have such a supportive sister. The sheer hypocrisy made me want to vomit. But I stayed focused, gathering more evidence, documenting every secret meeting, every suspicious text. I even hired a private investigator who got photos of them together at hotels. The Pi had followed them to a fancy restaurant where Mike had taken me for our anniversary just 2 months before. They sat at our usual table, holding hands across the same spot where he'd once promised to love me forever. The Pi's photos showed them laughing, kissing, acting like teenagers in love while my whole world was falling apart. The worst part wasn't even the physical betrayal, it was the emotional intimacy they shared. One night, I overheard them in our backyard during a family barbecue. Emma was telling Mike about her insecurities about the wedding, and he was comforting her, using the same gentle tone he used to use with me. They thought they were alone, but I was standing just around the corner, my hands shaking as I recorded their conversation on my phone. "What if someone figures it out?" Emma had whispered. "They won't," Mike assured her. "Sarah's completely clueless. She still thinks we're just close in-laws." They both laughed at that, and something inside me hardened. That was the moment I knew I wouldn't just expose them, I would destroy them. Update 1. The weekend before the wedding, I almost broke. Emma was having her bachelorette party, and everyone was talking about what a beautiful bride she'd make, how lucky James was. Mike was texting her constantly, pretending to check on wedding details. I excused myself to the bathroom and cried for 20 minutes straight. But then I remembered all the lies, all the betrayal, all the times they'd laughed behind my back. I dried my tears and rejoined the party. The next day, I finished putting together my presentation. Yes, you read that right, a presentation. The wedding day arrived, and everything was perfect. Emma looked stunning in her white dress, the irony wasn't lost on me, and James looked so happy it broke my heart. During the reception, it was time for the maid of honor's speech. I stood up, champagne glass in hand, and nodded to my friend at the laptop. "I'd like to make a toast," I said, as the projector whirred to life. My hands were shaking slightly, but my voice was steady. I'd practiced this speech 100 times in front of my mirror, perfecting every word, every pause, every subtle inflection. This was my moment, and I was going to make it count. The first slide was innocent enough, just a photo of Emma and me as kids, playing in our backyard. "Family is a precious thing," I began, watching Emma's face carefully. "It's built on trust, on loyalty, on love." I clicked to the next slide. "But sometimes the people we trust the most are the ones who betray us in the worst ways. To truth, loyalty, and family." The first image appeared on the screen, a screenshot of Mike and Emma's texts. The room went dead silent. "I've got quite a story to tell you all," I continued, my voice steady. For the next 10 minutes, I laid it all out. The texts, the photos, the hotel receipts. Emma tried to stop me, but I kept going. Mike attempted to leave, but my cousins blocked the door. James sat there, devastated, as his perfect day crumbled around him. When I finished, I looked directly at Emma and said, "The truth hurts, doesn't it, sis?" The aftermath was absolute chaos. Emma started screaming, mascara running down her face as she tried to grab the microphone from me. Mike attempted to unplug the projector but knocked over the champagne tower instead, sending glass shattering across the floor. James just sat there, completely still, staring at the images on the screen like he couldn't quite process what he was seeing. Several guests started filming on their phones, because of course they did. Emma's college friends were crying. Mike's mother fainted. My father had to be physically restrained from going after Mike. The wedding planner was having a meltdown about her perfect schedule being ruined. The catering staff stood awkwardly by the kitchen doors, wondering if they should still serve the main course. In the midst of all this, I remained perfectly calm. I'd anticipated the chaos, even welcomed it. Every scream, every shocked gasp, every phone camera pointed at the drama, it was all part of my revenge. They had humiliated me in private for months, I was just returning the favor in public. James got up slowly, removed his bow tie, and walked straight out of the reception hall. The wedding was obviously cancelled, and my parents were beside themselves. Mike tried to explain, saying it was complicated and that they never meant to hurt anyone. I laughed in his face and handed him divorce papers. I'd had them prepared for weeks. Update 2. It's been 3 months since the wedding that wasn't. The divorce is finalized. Turns out judges don't look kindly on adultery, especially with your wife's sister. James is pressing charges against both of them for fraud, since they'd accepted thousands in wedding gifts and his family had paid for most of the ceremony. Emma tried to apologize last week, in the most Emma way possible. She showed up at my apartment unannounced, wearing waterproof mascara, because of course she came prepared to cry, carrying a bottle of my favorite wine, which she probably bought with money from selling the wedding gifts she refused to return, and wearing the sister necklace I'd given her for her 25th birthday. The audacity of this woman knows no bounds. She stood there crying, perfectly composed, tears rolling down her cheeks as she launched into what was clearly a rehearsed speech. She talked about how lost she'd been, how Mike had pursued her relentlessly, lie, I'd seen their messages, she made the first move, how she tried to break it off multiple times, another lie, they'd been actively planning their future together. She even had the nerve to say that she'd only gone through with the wedding to James because she thought it would help her get over Mike. The entire time she was talking, all I could think about was how many times she'd sat on my couch, drinking wine and comforting me when I confided in her about feeling distant from Mike. All those times she'd assured me it was just a rough patch, that all marriages go through this, that Mike loved me so much, while she was sleeping with him behind my back. She showed up at my apartment crying, saying she'd made a horrible mistake and that Mike had manipulated her. I closed the door in her face. Some betrayals you just can't come back from. Mike's living with his parents now, in their basement like some teenager who never grew up. His fall from grace was spectacular. The company he works for, or should I say worked for, caught wind of the scandal when one of the wedding videos went viral locally. Turns out they had a strict morality clause in their contracts, and apparently, sleeping with your wife's sister while helping her defraud her fiancé doesn't align with company values. Who knew? The cherry on top? The woman Mike had been trying to impress at work, the one he claimed he needed to network with at all those late-night business meetings? She was the CEO's daughter, and she was absolutely disgusted when she found out what he'd done. Not only did Mike lose his job, but he's now basically unemployable in our industry. Nobody wants to hire someone who's gone viral for being the worst brother-in-law ever. The company he works for doesn't appreciate scandal, and he's been asked to resign. Emma's lost most of her friends, and even our parents are struggling to forgive her. They keep asking me if I couldn't have handled it differently, exposed them privately instead of ruining the wedding. But you know what? I don't regret it. They spent months deceiving everyone, playing happy families while stabbing me in the back. They were willing to let James marry her under false pretenses. They deserved every second of public humiliation. Update 3. The aftermath of the wedding disaster was even more intense than I expected. My phone blew up with messages from family members, friends, and even complete strangers who had heard about what happened. The video of my speech went viral in our small-town social media circles, and suddenly everyone had an opinion about how I handled things. Some people called me cruel for ruining Emma's wedding day. Others praised me for exposing the truth. My Aunt Martha, who had always favored Emma, called me a vindictive witch who had just been jealous of her younger, prettier sister. But my cousin Rachel, who had been cheated on herself, sent me a bottle of expensive champagne with a note that said queen behavior. The fallout affected more than just our immediate family. James's parents were devastated. They had already started treating Emma like a daughter, and his mom had even given her a family heirloom to wear during the ceremony. When they found out about the affair, they demanded everything back, including all the wedding gifts. Emma tried to argue that some things had been given to her out of love, but James's mom shut that down fast. The only thing you love is yourself, dear. Mike's family was another story entirely. His mother, who had always treated me like the daughter she never had, showed up at my apartment one day crying. She hugged me and apologized for raising such a terrible son. His father, on the other hand, tried to defend him, saying that marriages go through rough patches and that I should have handled things privately. I reminded him that privacy went out the window when my husband decided to sleep with my sister. Update 4. About 4 months after the wedding that wasn't, I ran into James at a coffee shop. We ended up talking for hours, piecing together all the signs we had missed. Turns out Mike and Emma had been meeting up under the guise of wedding planning, but they had started their affair long before that. James had found receipts for hotel rooms dating back almost a year, but Emma had convinced him they were for surprise parties and family events. James shared some stories that made my blood boil. Apparently, Emma had been wearing a necklace Mike gave her, one that matched a bracelet he had given me for our anniversary. They had been flaunting their relationship right under our noses, probably getting some sick thrill out of fooling everyone. The most shocking revelation came when James mentioned that Emma had been pushing for a quick wedding, insisting they didn't need a long engagement. Now we knew why. She and Mike had been planning to wait a few months after her wedding, then stage a huge fight between Mike and me that would end in divorce. They had it all planned out. Mike would move out, Emma would console him, and eventually they would fall in love and be together publicly. The level of calculation was staggering. Update 5. 5 months post-exposure, and the ripple effects are still being felt. Emma tried to reinvent herself as the victim, posting cryptic quotes about forgiveness and healing on social media. She even started a blog about surviving public humiliation and finding yourself after scandal. The audacity is breathtaking. Mike, meanwhile, has been trying to salvage his reputation. He sent me a 12-page letter explaining his side of things, claiming that he and Emma had fought their feelings for years but eventually couldn't deny their true love. I used the letter as kindling for my fire pit and roasted marshmallows over it with James and some friends. The family dynamics have shifted dramatically. Holiday plans are a nightmare. Everyone has to choose which events Emma can attend and which ones I'll be at. Most have chosen my side, but there are still a few relatives who think I should be the bigger person and forgive her. Yeah, no thanks. My parents are struggling the most. Dad hasn't spoken to Emma since the wedding day, but my mom keeps trying to fix things, unable to accept that some breaks can't be mended. She shows up unannounced with family photo albums, reminiscing about when Emma and I were little girls who shared everything. Remember how close you two were? She'll say, flipping through pictures of us in matching outfits. You were inseparable. Surely that bond means something? What she doesn't understand is that those memories are exactly why I can't forgive Emma. Each childhood photo is now tainted with the knowledge of what she would eventually do. That little girl in pigtails who swore to be my best friend forever grew up to sleep with my husband. That sister who promised to always have my back chose to stab me in it instead. The family therapy suggestion was the last straw. Mom had arranged it without asking, just texted me an address and appointment time like she was scheduling a dental cleaning. Dr. Anderson specializes in family reconciliation, she wrote. He's helped lots of families heal from betrayal. I replied with a lengthy message explaining exactly why that wasn't going to happen. I told her that some betrayals run too deep for therapy to fix, that forgiveness isn't always the answer, and that she needed to stop trying to force a reunion that was never going to happen. I love my mom, but her inability to accept the permanence of this fracture is just causing more pain for everyone. Final update. It's been 6 months now, and I'm finally starting to feel like myself again. I've moved to a new apartment, started a new job, and even gone on a few dates, though trust is still a major issue. James and I have actually become friends, best friends, really. It started with weekly coffee meetups where we compare notes and share our healing journeys, but it's evolved into something deeper. We understand each other in a way nobody else can. We've both been betrayed by the people we trusted most, both had our lives blown apart by the same two selfish people. Sometimes we laugh about how we technically almost became in-laws. Other times, we stay up late into the night, trying to piece together exactly when our respective relationships started falling apart. We've built a support system out of shared trauma, and somehow, it's become the healthiest relationship I've ever had. Our first real date was actually kind of perfect in its imperfection. We went to this little Italian restaurant, deliberately choosing a place neither of us had been to with Mike or Emma. Halfway through dinner, we both realized we were so nervous about dating again that we barely touched our food. We ended up getting our meals to go, driving to a park, and eating pasta out of takeout containers while sitting on a picnic bench under the stars. We talked for hours about everything and nothing, and for the first time in ages, I felt like I could breathe again. There's something weirdly poetic about finding love with the one person who truly understands your trust issues. We take things day by day, both fully aware of each other's baggage but willing to work through it together. When I have moments of paranoia or insecurity, James gets it. When he needs space to process his emotions, I understand. We're healing together, and it's messy and complicated and absolutely beautiful. The family is still fractured. Emma's moved to another state, and Mike's apparently dating someone new already. My parents are trying to heal the rift, but I've made it clear that I'm never going to have a relationship with Emma again. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ash. To everyone who's been cheated on, who's been betrayed by the people they trusted most, you're stronger than you know. Don't let anyone tell you how to handle your pain or when to forgive. Sometimes the most satisfying revenge is simply living well and letting karma do its work. Thanks for letting me share this, Reddit. It's been therapeutic getting it all out. Here's to new beginnings, and to karma being a magnificent force of justice.